Evening and welcome to our annual Historic Preservation Awards ceremony. This is our 18th annual ceremony put together to honor those folks, neighborhoods, organizations that contribute to the historic preservation of our community. My name is Cynthia Manning and I'm the chairperson of the Historic Preservation Commission. I'd also like to take just a moment to introduce the rest of the members of the commission who are here. If you could please stand. Thank you. Steve Schultz, Jim McDonald, Steve Adler, who's standing already, Bernadine Gannert, and Christy Hager. Is that everyone? So thank you all for coming too. You can't hear me? Wow, that's surprising. All right, Philip, do you want to do this slide? Thank you. The next one, please. The Historic Preservation Commission is a voluntary organization. We are interviewed and appointed by the City Council. We started in 1987. On the commission, there are 3 professional members, architects, historic preservation, archaeologists, that sort of people, 6 neighborhood members representing the historic neighborhoods, and a person from the Design Review Board, and a member of the Missoula Redevelopment Agency. Can we turn this up? If they can't hear me. There's 1 at-large member for all of Missoula County and 2 alternate members. We meet the first Thursday of every month at the City Council chambers. Okay. The purpose of our commission is to promote historic preservation of historic and prehistoric sites, of buildings, structures, objects, landscapes in the community. We look at historic preservation issues at the local level in Missoula County, and we try to integrate these issues and concerns into local, state, and federal planning. They're all tied together. We include the identification, evaluation, and protection of historic resources in Missoula. Thank you. We wanted to show one of the things that makes Missoula so special is the historic character of our downtown, of our neighborhoods. They're beautiful neighborhoods. We have great character. And so this is a photo of the Warden House. Tommy Lee Warden's here, but the Warden House, this was taken about in the 1880s. And you can see now in the next slide why historic preservation issues are so important as we have rapid development in the area. This is also from the same Waterworks Hill looking down with the Warden House. It's kind of hard to see. Missoula, we have 9 National Register historic districts listed. One of them is Fort Missoula, which is in the yellow. There's the north side, Lower Rattlesnake. There's the downtown area, which is just being completed right now. It's going through review and going back to DC to be formally designated as such. And within the downtown, there's the historic Pine Street district. There's the McCormick neighborhood, the south side, and the university area. Also the University of Montana campus. As we said, it's very important that we consider our downtown, our known sites, our historic landmarks, but also our historic neighborhoods. And this is one of the neighborhoods with one of our historic landmarks downtown. Okay. There are 4 criteria that we use when we consider what's listed on the National Register of Historic Places. Basically, they're events, buildings, or structures that are affiliated with historic events, historic people, they have certain architectural features or design, and they have the potential to yield significant information, usually regarding archaeology, prehistory. I'm going to pass it over now to Philip Meckling. Philip is our Historic Preservation Officer. Thanks, Philip.
Good evening, and thank you all for coming. A couple of years ago, we put together a project to basically show historic photographs and then to hire local photographers to come back and re-photograph those same areas. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about the re-photography project and how we did it. This thing appears to be on its own. The project was funded by the Montana Committee for the Humanities and the Missoula International Airport and the Office of Planning and Grants and some other individuals. And it was a really interesting collaboration in terms of both putting the project together and having it displayed. There's a complete exhibition of this out at the Missoula International Airport. Can you go next slide? And part of it is in the Missoula County Courthouse and then City Hall right now. This is the Missoula County Courthouse in 1921. It was designed by A.J. Gibson. This is the Missoula County Courthouse today. The interesting thing about this image is that aside from the annex to the courthouse, which I think a lot of people would like to see removed, much of the streetscape and skyline remains the same. You can see St. Francis Church, you can see the North Hills, and the landscape around Missoula. Okay. This is Bonner in 1945, Bonner, Montana. And in the foreground is the Bonner School, and you can see that the mill is just raging away. This is Bonner today. The trees have grown back. The mill, when this picture was taken, was actually still running. And as you know, the mill is no longer running right now. This is downtown Missoula in the early 1920s. And you can see on what would be the left-hand side of your screen, the second Florence Hotel. That hotel burned in the mid-1930s and was replaced by the current Florence Hotel. This is it today, and you can see the Missoula Mercantile Building and the Higgins Bank Building are both intact and in place, and they form the streetscape that we have in downtown Missoula that is so remarkable. This is Bonita, Montana. Some of you may know where it is. It's east of Rock Creek. This was about 1900. There was a small town at Bonita, along with a railroad. The flood of 1908, just 100 years ago, took out the town of Bonita and took out the railroad. The railroad was moved to the north side of the river, and the rest of the community has gone. So today, and Christy Hager took this photograph. It took a while for her to find the location, but today the remnant of the railroad and of Bonita is seen in the railroad ties that are used as fence posts. That's it for the railroad. The University of Montana campus around 1904. You can see the first buildings of the University of Montana campus, main hall, the women's dormitory, the venture center, the science building, and the gym. This is it today, and as you know, it's a landlocked campus. And so it's extremely important how the university cares for the physical space there along with the location of buildings and the rest of the infrastructure. This is Fort Missoula in mid-World War II, and you can see the internment camp barracks in the foreground and the non-commissioned officers. The officers' row is in the background. Right now, what you see are the foundations, the flat foundations of the internment camp buildings. But again, the landscape surrounding Missoula is still there in its same form. This was an interesting climb. I made the climb as well. This is the lower Rattlesnake and the Hughes Gardens seen from Mount Sentinel. And again, you see there are no trees on Mount Sentinel as there were no trees around Bonner. Now the trees have grown back, what trees there are. And of course, the lower Rattlesnake and the Hughes Gardens are gone. The lower Rattlesnake is filled in. But again, the landscape remains the same. And Missoulians really do care about the framework, north hills and hillsides that surround Missoula and have done much to protect them. Next. This is about 1890, down on the south side of the river, showing native peoples, and this is what the park looks like today. Much of the landscape remains the same. This is East Pine Street, which is a National Historic District right now. And you can see that it was well planted by about 1922 when this picture was taken, with that distinctive landscape median in the center. And the trees have grown by 2006. This is down by the river. So many of you will recognize the bridge. This is the Higgins Avenue Bridge prior to the 1908 flood. If you cross, and when you cross the Van Buren Bridge, the pedestrian bridge, that's the original or the second Higgins Avenue Bridge. When the 1908 flood took the bridge out, it was relocated upstream. And this is what we see. This is the Bonner Mansion on Eddy and called the Spotswood. It was torn down in the mid-1960s and replaced by this. Sometimes progress is not pretty. The Higgins Avenue Bridge, a McKay picture taken in the 1920s. You can see the Wilma building is already there, and here's the same scene taken from the Penwell building, and the landscape again remains much the same. The power plant, the coal-fired power plant that was down by the river, of course, is gone. Next. This is the H.O. Bell building, taken in the mid-1920s, and you can see it again today. H.O. Bell was a very prominent Missoulian proprietor of the Ford dealership right down on South Higgins Avenue, and again, the building today, virtually no change in the exterior except the landscaping has changed, and the trees have grown. Main Street and the Missoula Hotel in around 1910, 1920, Christy? When was this one, 1910 or 19? I think it was about 1910. This is not 1910. And again, this is a project that really needs some help. But the building is there. It's an unusual building for Missoula, a Tudor Revival style commercial building. Next. The French Club, I think lots of us know that there were French people in Frenchtown. Well, there was a French club here in Missoula. What's that? Okay. And again, the scene today. Each of the photographers had license to go and interpret the historic image. And so we see actually a reconstructed building in the center of the image. But Chris Audio took this picture. If he had taken it from exactly the same position as the photographer originally did, would have been under the awning, under that marquee, and wouldn't have seen anything. And so he actually stepped out into the street to capture the image. This is a panorama of Missoula taken from the North Hills, over not too far from the radio antenna that's up on the North Hills. And this was taken in 1910, and it's about a 180-degree image looking at the Hellgate Canyon all the way over to the north side. And this is an image taken in 2006 by Will Landon. And he and his camera, we'll show you in a minute, are about the same age. He's 77, and he and his wife are the photographic team. The image is actually 4 feet long, and it's a very high level of detail showing the formation of Missoula. Next one. And this is from 1910, and you can see the original Carnegie Library building in this picture when it was a one-story building before they added the second story in 1913. Next one. And this again is what it looks like today. The next one. This is Will and his wife working on his circuit camera. The camera actually spins around in a complete circle on a circular track, driven by a mechanism very similar to a grandfather clock, a wind-up motor. Next. And this is Will sighting in. We triangulated the location to be the exact same spot where the original picture was taken. And it took us 3 days to get to actually get the picture because of a combination of weather and light. The next one. This is Chris up at the top of the water tower. It was a 142-foot climb, quite an interesting effort, if anyone wants to know how to do that. And this is Mark printing. We were printing some of the photographs when the university was in mid-session, and actually it was 55 degrees inside the darkroom, so we had to wear full winter gear. That's okay. That's the one. That's what needs to be on there. So those are some of the images of Missoula then and now, and some of the changes that have taken place.
A couple of years ago, we were faced with issues of looking at doing historic zoning overlays for various historic districts in Missoula. Jennifer Anthony started with the work many years ago. We've had great community involvement, and we weren't sure which direction we were moving, and we were really very, very fortunate that the University of Montana Law School, through their land use clinic, volunteered to help draft a zoning ordinance for us for historic structures and neighborhoods. I'd like Michelle Bryan Mudd to come forward. She's had 2 years of third-year law students. Unfortunately, the law students are studying for their exams, the bar exam, and so they're not able to be here. But we'd really like to thank Michelle and the students, Justin Bremer and Shannon Piccolo, Helen Thigpen and Amy Scott Smith for all the work that they've done. It was just tremendous, tremendous effort. We are starting to circulate and to present what is present in the ordinance, and so far it's met with pretty good reception. Interestingly, we got into a question about what to do about archaeological resources or below ground resources and traditional cultural properties. And so they also took that ordinance on and actually drafted one on archaeology, which I really don't think has been done anywhere that unified in the United States. So it really took a lot of extra research and a lot of extra effort. So we'd really like to thank Michelle for all the work, and we've really enjoyed working with you and the students, so thank you very much. And with that, we're presenting Michelle and the 2 students with a guide to historic Missoula by our own Alan Matthews. So thank you very much. I really appreciate it. I'm going to move now into the presentation of the awards. And how we'd like to do it is this. I'll announce them. I know that for one of the neighborhoods, there's more than one of you. Anyone that's interested in coming up, please come up and you can have a few minutes to tell your story and show the slides that you've brought for the rest of the group. Explain some of the work that you did. This, to me, is one of the best parts of this award ceremony, and really fun to hear how people have worked and pursued their dreams to restore their properties. So it's pretty fun. Okay, our first award is in the Public and Private Organization, Restoration, Rehabilitation, Friends of the 9 Mile House, Ranger Station, excuse me. I don't have my glasses on, so this is kind of, where'd you hold that from? Friends of the, they're right there, they're so dirty, I can't see. Friends of the 9 Mile Ranger Station, Sue Matthews for the U.S. Forest Service, so Dave Atkins, the 9 Mile Station, Remount Road and 9 Mile Road in Missoula. So would you please come up?
This is a fun honor. And actually, I sort of came into this backwards. Fortunately, my parents moved from Baltimore during World War II to New Orleans. And on a wild whim, they purchased an old antebellum plantation across the river from New Orleans. And I grew up on 9 Mile Point of the Mississippi River. And there was a sense of place there that we grew up. We lived in antique furniture. We knew how to take care of a place. I can remember as a kid painting the inside of the cistern, which was our drinking supply. And so, unfortunately, I just wasn't born to live in the South much longer than I did. I mean, you could cinch, I've been cinching up horses, I shouldn't say that today. You could lace me up and I still wouldn't look like Scarlett O'Hara. And so I had to move west and went through a long path, 20 years in Alaska as a wildlife biologist, and I'm not with the Forest Service. Poor Dave has to wear a uniform. Don't you love it? I was with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and I ended up at the 9 Mile Ranger Station, which is just 20 miles west of here, and it's on the historic register. And that whole feeling of sense of place came back to me. And unfortunately, for many reasons, budgets are dwindling in many of the federal agencies. I retired, so the budget went way back up again. But I was enamored with this remarkable place and meetings that we had in these wooden floor administrative buildings that were built in the 1930s as a remount, historic remount depot. You could bring your old horse in and get a new horse. And the mules are still there, though. And because of the Wilderness Act, it became important now to access public lands through the use of mules. And so there are 2 working mule pack trains there, which I fell in love with them as well. And one is the 9 Mile Ranger Station, one is the northern region of the Forest Service pack train. But in the winter time, it's even better, and I'm inviting every single one of you to come out and help feed 280 mules. Because the other forests don't have the kind of habitat to overwinter. They're all high elevation, and so they come to the 9 Mile Ranger Station. So it's a magic place, it's an historic place, and people come and sit. We have a little small visitor center that the Friends of 9 Mile Ranger Station has taken over now, supervising. And because they lost the position that supervised, and they're volunteers at the visitor center, but we can see people sitting on some of the park benches and just feeling it, just feeling the history of what has happened there. And so we created this Friends group, which is very common for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. It was new for the Forest Service. This is the first Friends group of a national forest. We did have to work with contracting because we weren't to give money to the Forest Service, and that was not understood, and we made it possible, and we are making small grants now. It's a membership organization, a lot of locals. If you have an opportunity to come out, it's a remarkable place. Sit, listen to the conversations that have obviously been going on for 100 years. Come and feed the mules, and certainly get excited about the fact that it's continuing to be a working ranger station. It's not all cordoned off so that you have to peek in and look. You walk into these buildings, and it's in part of the community, and it's a remarkable mixture of a federal agency working directly with the community. So Dave Atkins is a temporary ranger here now, and if you'd like to butt in, no.
Want to say thank you on behalf of the Forest Service. I've only been the ranger out there for 3 weeks now, so I can't take a lot of credit for what all has been done. But you know, the work that has been going on has been going on for a lot of years, and there are a number of people at the station, Bob Hoverson, Shiffy Wellborn, that have just been there to keep going. And as many of you know, these types of efforts in preservation take perseverance, and you have to keep working at that and squeezing where you can. Milo McLeod, the forest archaeologist, has been real key, and Kirby Matthew, and lots of people, and support from the regional forester and the forest supervisors to help keep these things going. And to me, one of the things that's exciting is that, as Bev said, it is a working station, and so you can see all of those things in place. But one of the other things that we've developed out there is a training center on wilderness techniques and horsemanship, but also preservation techniques. And so there are courses that are taught that help people do the restoration work in other locations. And so it's an ongoing thing that will pass on to other employees and future generations of the Forest Service. And so I want to thank you very much for honoring the 9 Mile Remount Station, and it's great to have it recognized. Thanks.
while we do this, we're showing a few slides. They're random slides, and if anyone wants to comment on the slides who participated, you're welcome to do it. It's one of those, now you've got the mic in front of you, and here's a picture of your project. You can also see it on this computer screen here while you're standing. So if there are any things you want to say about what you did, we'll have some pictures up there that you can see.
Okay, the next category is for public and private organizations and restoration, and this award goes to the Board of County Commissioners for the Missoula County Courthouse on West Broadway, and this is for the historic handrails and grand staircase. This goes to A&E Architects, Missoula County Facilities, Larry Farnes, Anne Mary Dussault, and Ole Field Fabricator.
I get the privilege of I get the privilege of working in one of the centerpieces of Missoula and having the honor of working through these projects and with people that consider every historical aspect of how to work in a living, breathing, functioning building and still do it historically. This is one of the funnest projects we've had yet, in that we were challenged to meet some ADA requirements and yet make the ADA requirements fit into the courthouse in a way that carries the historical aspects. Ole Field is an iron architect and engineer and designer and did a fantastic job duplicating the new ADA handrail compared to the ones that were built and put in place almost 100 years ago. One of the challenges that we had, and Paul and Jim from A&E helped figure out some of the things, we took the old handrails out and we had these big 4-inch holes in the marble staircase to figure out what to do and make these look like not only we created something that was historical but filled the hole and made it safe to walk on. So in the process of working through this, we came up with a brass plate that would fit in these holes, fill the hole, and yet would come with the historic quality that the courthouse had. And in the process of figuring out what to put there, we used a 100-year-old doorknob and went through the engineering or measurements to make the M in this match the M in the doorknob. So, you know, with the help of some creative people and a craftsman that really knew his trade, this is one of the fun projects we've had there.
Larry, I'm sorry, we couldn't hear what you said about that round piece. Did you have it again?
This piece right, this is a doorknob. This doorknob is 100 years old. This brass plate's about 1.5 years or 2 years old, and they're identical in dimensions, you know, the scale and everything. And they filled this hole in the marble staircase. If you walk up these staircases, they look like they've been there for 100 years. So, you know, for the architects that designed this, for Ole Field that put it together, it's a great honor for both of them, and it's a fun place to work. So I'll pass these around if you want to look at them.
The next category is for commercial restoration of original construction, and this is for Zip Auto and Richard Nash on West Main Street. This is A&E Architects again, and Rina King.
Thanks. My name's Kim Reineking. I was the contractor on the job. A&E Architects, Paul Filissette, and his crew really did a great job of designing this. Rick Nash couldn't be here tonight. He's a little sick. And this is really for him. He believes in these old buildings. He believes in old cars, old airplanes, and old trains. What he said to me today on the phone is he asked me to set straight the alignment part of this building. Because that is absolutely correct spelling, because it was for Bears alignment, and that was what they used as their symbol. And I got on the internet to verify this because I wasn't sure Rick was telling me the truth. And it says Bear Alignment was a nationwide chain of alignment shops that operated for 50 years, beginning in the 20s till the 70s. And what they did is they used this spelling as their slogan for alignment. So thanks a lot.
They did a really remarkable job in the restoration of these signs and cleaning them. Come on.
These signs, we actually never touched the paint to repaint them. They were cleaned with a toothbrush and a Q-tip swab. Philip Wilson, who was working for me at the time, spent 5 weeks cleaning these signs. Great.
The next award category is for residential new construction compatible with an historic district. And this award goes to Janine Kaywood and Milo McLeod for 1002 South, 6th West, along with Jim McDonald and Eric Barsness.
Hi, Jack. We live in the McCormick neighborhood, which is, if you're familiar with it, it's kind of an eclectic old neighborhood with a wide variety of housing, apartment buildings, small, modest homes, and larger homes. And the idea for this little building, actually, I wanted a potting shed, and I saw some kind of cool ones in Sunset Magazine. And so I asked Jim if he could come up with a plan, and the plan that he envisioned was to have a timber frame building. And then we asked Eric to build it for us, Eric Barsness. He's done most of the work on our house on the main building, and we started talking about the idea of using reclaimed materials. And so Eric located some used wood up at Potomac, and we went and took a look at it, and that's kind of how this building evolved. Eric had all of the work of making odd-sized materials fit this design. So it's really is a handmade building, and Eric deserves the credit for the way it turned out. It turned out great. But this little building kind of pulls together elements of the main house on the property. There's sidewall shingles on the dormers. The windows match almost exactly the windows on the rear porch. And from a potting shed, we moved to a sleeping cottage. So in our house, all of the bedrooms are upstairs, so it gets really hot in the summertime. So this is where we sleep in the summer now. But Eric, do you want to talk about putting it together?
We found an old timber frame for Gary Delp, who handles recycled material, and it came from New York, and so we used that for the structure. And then all of the, like the door that I built and all the windows are material that I got from Hunt's. And then the inside paneling is aspen that I got from a friend who has a sawmill in Dillon. So it was a lot of recycle and a lot of local products, and it was an interesting project. Thank you.
Okay, our next category is for residential restoration, and this goes to Marina Snow for 214 South 4th Street West. Also with Will Farrington, Craig Rail, James Horton, Tyler Rohde, and Mac the Antique Plumber. Hi, it's nice to meet you. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, you should have seen this house before.
You gotta use the mic.
You should have seen this house before. Here is an after photograph. Well, through the year, oh, and I have these before pictures too. I would love to show people. I've got a whole stack of them, exterior and interior, and so anybody who wants to see them, can ask me afterwards. You know, through the years, I've visited my sister Georgiana McNaughton, and she is there at the table with a camera to take pictures of me. And I always enjoyed visiting her here in Missoula, and thought if I ever moved away from my home in Sacramento, this is where I'd like to live. Well, one day I got a telephone call, and it's Georgiana saying, "The house next door is for sale. Why don't you buy it and fix it up?" Well, okay. She had an apartment in a carriage house on her property, and she won an award for it for the adaptive reuse of a historical structure. And she said, "Marina, you can stay in the carriage house while you're working on the house." Okay. And so my son, James Horton, helped me move from Sacramento, from my house, which I did sell. I had already restored an 1898 Victorian cottage, Queen Anne cottage in Sacramento. So I'd done this before. Well, my son helped me move here, and this was the saddest house you would ever see. It needed everything, or it was just going to fall apart. So we found Craig Rail here. My son directed the project, and Craig was the on-site contractor, and he not only supervised all the subcontractors, but he added his expertise to every aspect of the construction. Wow. So I'd like to ask you to come over here and try to talk into this and say some of the things that we had to face.
When we walked in, Marina said, just talk about how everything happened or what went on. And I'd written, and I don't know if this is pertinent, but I love quotes. And so one of my favorite quotes is that marriage is not a walk through an open field. And we ended up being married in lots of ways and lots of different people. Marina and I have had, believe it or not, a few rough moments, and we're still awfully good friends.
That's true.
I feel like some things, and I'm not sure if the project was that way, but some parts of the project were a combination of an inspiration and accident. And I don't know if Eric will, I've known Eric for a while, I'm not sure if a lot of projects go that way, but this one did. And James came up to me and asked me if I wanted to be a project manager. I said, "Well, you got the right guy." And he said, "Well, yeah, you come recommended." And I said, "Well, I'll probably just sweep the floor and make sure everybody's got their tools and see if they need anything." And he said, that'd probably be about the right thing to do. So, and honestly, during the project, I found that keeping everybody's mood in the right place and their head in the right place and keeping the work in front of them so that they could put the devotion into it that was necessary was a really important part of obtaining a final product. And as I was looking through this, I mean, it's a lot like a marriage. All of a sudden, you know, we went through tens of thousands of dollars, and then we didn't exactly go through hundreds of thousands of dollars, but there was a moment there where we were wondering. So all these problems kept surmounting. There had to be a vision, and honestly, Marina had almost the entire vision. She knew what she wanted and knew the things that were going to go in the house. Now, those are kind of evolving the same way that when an artist sees a canvas and starts making a picture, they evolved. And sometimes we would put the picture, put the picture up in plywood and then have to kind of rip the picture down again and put a new picture up. But we went through a lot of that, and I'm glad we went through an artistic process because we did a lot of it by feel. Then we did have a lot of problems. Our sheetrocker drank too much and left before the job was done, which kind of happens. The tax man came, and there was a moment where we were all out of money for a brief period of time, and then we had enough money to get back on the bus and keep going. And then one of my favorite people was a plumber who'd done an awful lot of new construction. And he came in, he's a young guy, and he's kind of strapping tall and really full of energy, and he's kind of a can-do guy, and he said, I can plumb this house as fast and as good as anybody you've ever met. And I just looked at him and I said, well, this is kind of a stop and smell the roses kind of project, you know. And he said, well, I'll get it done, I'll get it done. And I came back about a day and a half later, and I said, well, how's the project going? And he said, man, I've been through so many hole saws, you wouldn't believe it. I've ruined 3 hole saws and my bits are all dull. So he'd been running into nails and just all the kind of problems you run into in a restoration. And I'm so glad that Marina had a vision and had the, the faith and the glue to keep everything together. And it was just a real pleasure to work with so many people and to see everybody care about the house and to come up with a product that was pretty beautiful when we got done. It's just around, actually, if you go to Le Petit Bakery and look kitty corner from there, you'll see the house. So, all right, thank you.
I know that the microphone is kind of a problem for people, but it really is helpful, and especially to have this recorded. If you do stand up close to it, please. I know that's kind of awkward, but if we could get through that. This is really fun. There's so many friends and actual colleagues getting these awards. The one after this is the one I'm scared for. Dr. Patterson sitting in the audience, the math department. The next one is for public and private organizations, compatible addition, renovation, rehabilitation. And this goes to the Boone and Crockett Club in the Milwaukee Depot building on Station Drive, Mike Gilbert and Oz Architects.
Thank you for this wonderful award. I wish I could say I had something to do with this project, but I really didn't. So the principal architect from Oz Architects couldn't be here tonight, so I just wanted to recognize Stan Zimmett, who was the principal architect, and Dave Scheel, another architect in our office who worked on the original design for the Boone and Crockett Club connector. And luckily, Mike Gilbert is here today, and I think he can probably fill you in on the details of the project. So thank you.
Thanks. I want to say thanks to Marty.
that was a fun, I think it turned out really well. It was a really fun project to work on. I want to thank Dave Arledge from Gordon Construction. He's the one that made this happen. The Boone and Crockett people who chose to buy this building that had no financial reason to stay, and took all the bad stuff off and redid it. So you can see some of the demo pictures. We used all the original openings to use for new bathrooms in the lobby. Right here, all these openings were used for the new circulation and new. I guess that's it. The reason there's a building there now, instead of the gap between the buildings, is because the Boone and Crockett needed an education facility, lobby, entry, museum of sorts. So it had to be a lobby, but we made it as transparent as we could so that you could still see through it. And when you're in that, you see the old wall of this building and the old wall of that building as if you're still outside, and it really feels like that. And you can see from the back to the front to the river. So that was important. So that's it. Thank you to Oz.
I'm Earl Morgan Roth. I know a lot of you out there, but not all of you, and I am a member of the Boone and Crockett Club, and I thought you'd be interested in hearing a story on how the Boone and Crockett Club got to Missoula, Montana. Anyway, this has started up over 20 years ago, and I was doing some rehab on buildings downtown and working with Ron Klaphocky and Jeff Badnock, and anyway, the one building, of course, well, there were actually two buildings I really wanted to do some work on. One was the Milwaukee Depot, and of course the other was the Wilma building, and I came very close on the Wilma building. And the Milwaukee Depot happened to fall into my lap. The fellows that were running it had a couple of restaurants down there and ended up with some financial difficulties, and the First National Bank then, which First Interstate Bank now, took the building over. So I went down and bought an option on the building, and I was living in Reno at the time and flying back and forth. And anyway, I got a call from both Ron and the other fellow, Jeff, saying that the Boone and Crockett Club was looking for a new headquarters, and they were going to visit Missoula, Montana. And because they'd been in the Smithsonian and the Carnegie Museum at one time, they thought that this building might be the building that would attract them, and asked if I was interested in leasing the building to them. I thought, Jesus, what an opportunity, of course. So anyway, I flew up and met with a group, including Steve Adams, who was the president of the club at the time, and sat down and tried to work out an agreement. One of them was a big oil man from Texas, was part of this group, and said, look, if we're going to move the headquarters from Dunphy, Virginia, out to this part of the country, we want to own the building. So he says, what do you want for the option? I said, look, if you guys will move to Missoula, Montana and buy that building, I said, I'll give you the option for the building. So they said, fine, we'll do it. And the one guy wrote a check for the building right there. I mean, this is unbelievable. Hadn't met people like this in my life, you know, being a poor little Missoula guy. So anyway, Steve Adams, just as we were leaving, he turned to me and asked a question that I, in fact, should have said no to. He said, are you a hunter? And I said, I sure am. And anyway, within 2 years, I'm a member of the Boone and Crockett Club. And where do they put me? They put me on the building committee. And guess what my first project was? To rehab the Milwaukee Depot, which I did with my plan, my builder, my architect, and some of my money. And we did the first rehab and kept the building exactly what it was. And anyway, I think we're very lucky to get a quality organization like the Boone and Crockett Club in Missoula, Montana. And I always say we're always interested in prehistoric or historic preservation because, in fact, the Boone and Crockett Club is a classic example of historic preservation. It was formed in 1896 by Theodore Roosevelt with 100 regular members and with professional members. And the organization exists today with 100 regular members and about 100 professional members. And in fact is one of the most powerful and influential organizations in America. You wouldn't know it. They're quiet in Missoula, Montana. There's hardly a word said, but The Boone and Crockett Club heads up a coalition of 42 national wildlife organizations that include the NRA, Safari Club, you take it right on down the line. And it's an extraordinary group. We're very privileged to have them here. And at that time, there were only 2 members in the Boone and Crockett Club from Montana. And now there's over 20. It's the largest delegation of members of, any state in the nation. And it's because they came up here in meetings, fell in love with it, bought ranches, and a lot of them just moved up. And part of them are here in the summertime, so I think it's been a great economic boon for Missoula. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, the next category is for public and private organizations and restoration rehabilitation, the most compatible edition. And this goes to the University of Montana, the Math Building Edition. To Mike Gilbert, Jamil Chaudhry, his campus architect, Serious Construction, Robert Duringer, and our commission member, Bernadine Gannert.
Thank you very much. It's an honor. $1 million building, $1.5 million building involves a lot of people. So I'd like to thank a few that are here, actually. Dave Patterson in the red is the chair of the math department, instrumental in putting his foot down and saying, no, this is what we want, this is what we need, and kept the group going the same direction. Jamil Chaudhry from the university, who kept everybody in line. Eric Burns from Serious Construction, who is the superintendent and got this built. It's a really well-built building, regardless of everything else. From the math department, we have Dave, Michelle Johnson, Mark Kale, Serious Construction, Greg Niemoff, Ed Adams was the project manager, and Eric Burns. Rick Helms from the state, Jamil we mentioned. I had a lot of engineers, Tom Bodette, John Melvin, Mike Fussell, Jeff Smith, and there were others. Bernadine is here. Here's see the porches on the, all that was taken off in the 20s to make it into a physics building, I believe, science and physics. It looked too residential, so they took all the porches off, and they're all gone, but I have the old drawings, and so on the addition, you'll see a little porch roof on the new entrance on the back, and I took those little pieces and kind of abstracted them and there. Put them on the back entrance so that there's a little nod to the original building, which is long gone, all the pieces. I'd also like to put a little plug in. This is interesting because I don't think this is my strength so much. I'm more of a modernist at heart, I guess. In any era, regardless, there's good design and bad design. When these buildings were new, there were good buildings and there were bad buildings. And it's the same now. And you have to keep that in mind, that there are people now in this generation who can design good, great design which will last and will still be here. And you have to look at it with the same evaluation that you look at those old buildings. You just have to understand them and see how they work and how it goes together. So thanks to all these people and the university, and thank you.
Hi there, my name is Jamil from the university. We're very pleased that we did hire Mike Gilbert in doing the whole design. And just a brief recap that in the write-up that we were given about the reasons why we got the award, one was of course the architectural preservation aspect and compatibility, but the other was also working within the university bureaucracy. And so just a brief history on that. The whole project really started out with Bernadine's group, the Disability Student Services, lobbying the state government for ADA accessibility money so that we could get an elevator into this math building. All of the students are required to take mathematics as part of the general education. And in this building, you have no accessibility to the first floor and second floor and third floor, so it's kind of dumb to have all of the students go into a building where the wheelchair people cannot come in and study. So at first we just kind of thought, well, we'll stick an elevator onto the back of it. Shouldn't cost us more than $350,000, right? So the state says, okay, fine, we'll give you that. And the university was saying, okay, well, if push comes to shove, we'll give another $100,000. So we figured $450,000 should get us a nice addition. Well, it became soon apparent at our very first meeting with the faculty that they were not having any of that. They did not want us to go inside the building and remove valuable existing space and just cram an elevator down their throats. They said we do not have enough bathroom space, we do not have any offices because our faculty are kind of spread all over the campus. We really want them all together. So a simple old elevator turned out to be a building that had 88 bathrooms on each floor and 2 additional faculty offices on each floor. And so it just kind of traditional scope creep, which I think is quite typical. But anyway, somehow we managed to scrape together another $450,000, which was all university money. None of the additional was state money. So typical to bureaucracy, you steal from other projects to pay for yours. And when the other projects need money, you steal from the next project, etc. So kind of the way that the federal government runs things. But anyway, from the drawings, you can really see the compatibility with the existing. I think Mike did a fantastic job in matching how the old granite base of the old building is kind of replicated into a more contemporary concrete base with grooves to kind of simulate the masonry joints. And then he kind of matched all of the upper brick coursework and kept the window orientation pattern and proportions all fairly similar. And whereas I would have probably put a pyramid hip roof on it, he kind of talked me out of that and put a flat roof to keep it more contemporary. And the glass bridge between the old and the new is, of course, a very classical contemporary way of adding on to a historic building. But what's really nice is that as you go through the bridge between the old and the new, you can look through the glass and really see the old building and then the new building. So it really is a nice bridge that you're crossing. And I think the math department got quite a lot out of it, more than just an elevator. Thank you.
Jamil reminded me, and I wanted to say that first, and I'm sorry I didn't with Bernadine here. The most important thing about this whole thing is the new entrance. Everybody, able-bodied or not, goes through the same door and goes right to the elevator and go to wherever they need to go in the building. There's no ramp down to the basement to a dark hallway and then find the elevator and work your way up. Everybody goes in the same door, and that was the driving force behind the whole lobby scheme and how it worked. So, thank you.
I'm David Patterson, chairman of the math department, and we're the beneficiary of this work, and we couldn't be happier. It's a wonderful, wonderful addition. And Jamil talked a little bit about the evolution of this, and it was really amazing from starting with the design, with sticking an elevator up through a lounge and a student lounge and so on. Bob Duringer, the vice president for administration and finance, we brought him over and showed him these old inaccessible bathrooms that were only in the basement and so on. And we said, you know, this is an opportunity to do more. And he looked around the building and he came back and he said, we don't do interior elevators. And from then, Jamil and Mike took over and the design evolved, and every time it got better. And what we ended up with was way more than I anticipated. So I'd like to thank Mike and Jamil and everybody involved in the construction, Eric and Bernadine on the planning, and it was just a wonderful project. Thank you.
Okay, our next category is residential new construction compatible with an historic district. And this award goes to Mars and Elaine Scott at 340 University, along with Paradigm Architects and Wade Hoyt.
Well, it's a real honor to get this award. I wish I could take a lot of credit for it, but I really can't. That's the new construction, or the new porch. If you look at the old pictures, we have these tall evergreens that are in the front of the house. So my wife indicated to me one time that it was time for a new porch, and I was all for it, not because I wanted a new porch, but because I wanted to get rid of those evergreens, because I was tired of putting Christmas lights on them every year, and I thought this is a good way to get not have to do that. So, we moved into the house in 1990, 1991, somewhere in there. Some of you may remember David Davies, who was in Missoula, owned Bitterroot Floral and Davies John Deere Tractors, owned the house before us, and he had bought it from a fraternity organization. There had been a fraternity house there that had burned down in the 60s or 70s, and he bought it and then built this house, and it was styled after English saltbox houses. And he thought that that was a compatible design for the university area at the time, and I think that it was. Of course, when we bought the house, there were all these plants and flowers. There were 130 rose bushes in the yard, and I remember about 2 or 3 weeks after we moved in, a good friend of mine came over and started taking pictures of the house. And I said, "Jeff, why are you taking so many pictures of the house?" And he said, "Because I know that this yard will never look as good as it does now ever again." So I want to have this before and after picture, and I think he was probably right, because I think we only have about 15 rose bushes now in the yard. But when we did decide to put the new porch on the front of the house, it was my wife who really had the idea and the inspiration, and we'd worked with David before on some construction that I had done on a building that I own here in Missoula. And so we contacted David and gave him the ideas of what we had for the porch, which were really my wife's ideas. And she'd looked through some magazines and got a pretty good feel for what she wanted for the porch. But with a lot of things, you know, that your first idea is not always your best idea. So I went through a couple of design changes, and really what I did was I just kind of got out of the way, and David was there to help design it and put together the architectural plans, and then Wade Hoyt, whom I shoot skeet with, hired him to do the construction work. And I can't say enough about these two people, because I really didn't have anything to do with it. I just stood out of the way and watched the bushes go. And once the bushes were gone, I was real happy and wasn't sure what the result was going to be. But the result came out like it did. And what's so amazing about this is that we now spend more time in the front yard than we ever have before. And I don't know if it's cultural or what, but you know, I grew up having barbecues and family get-togethers in the backyards. And since we now have this porch and have spent more time in the front, we've had a number of people come by and say to us, you know, I grew up back east someplace, and everyone always sits on their front porches, but out here in the west, everyone's in the back doing barbecues or whatever. No one's on the front porch as much. So it's been a real change almost in lifestyle, because we really enjoy sitting out on the porch. It's kind of like TV. You know, you sit there and people go down the street and cars go by and bicyclists come by, and there's always this activity and always this movement that's going on, which we'd never really experienced before. So it's been an interesting change just in how we relax and kind of spend some time at the house. So again, I can't say enough about David and Wade Hoyt, and it's a real honor to receive the award. Thank you.
So I'm David Gray. I can make some of this stuff a little quick. One part that we can point out that's historic on the house is, see the boulder in the front yard? When they were excavating for the new steps, that's one of the Lake Missoula boulders that came off the side of Hellgate Canyon, and it's I don't know, about the size of a front end of a car. They had to bring up, but it was like a typical remodel and restoration. Anywhere you go in Missoula, the shingles are discontinued. You can't get the roofing. You can't get the siding anymore. And Wade Hoyt was really good at being able to piece all these new materials together, and Martha Lane willing to go along with everybody, and turned out to be a nice project. Thank you.
This next award is kind of an interesting one. This is for restoration maintenance of historic district structures, the 600 block of South 5th West. Philip was walking around looking at some of the neighborhoods, and it just really struck him what a neat block this was. And coincidentally, when we were driving around to look at the nominations, it made me stop in my tracks before I realized this was actually the block that was being nominated. What a cool block it was and what beautiful buildings there were there. So the whole block is receiving an award. I'm not sure what people are here from the block, if they'd like to come up. Come on. Come on.
Ladies and, is that all right? Boys and girls, especially the boys and girls all the way in the back. Could you be quiet for just a few minutes, please? We would appreciate it. You know, all the time in school you have the kids who cut up in the back. And of course we have that here once in a while. But I digress. I want to thank the Historical Society for presenting the 600 block of South 5th West an award. This is fantastic. It really is. And the King House, I would like you to know, is paid for. I mean, it's paid for. And I paid the taxes just 2 days ago. And now the taxes are just about as much, probably more, than the house payments were once. We paid $13,000 for that home back in 1958. And I lived there for about 30 years until I met a man who talked me into moving about 8 blocks away. Actually, he didn't talk me into it. Halfway between his body shop, I might just as well give him a commercial tonight, his body shop over there, the health club, and my old house. We are on 8th Street, where are we? We're on Lawrence Street now. But anyway, that 600 block, that whole street is just great. It always has been. We raised 5 kids there. They could walk to school, they could walk to the store, they could walk to the Wilma, they could go everywhere, and it was just great. And incidentally, we got that house because my grandmother, my maternal grandmother that I really never got along with, she left me $1,000. Which was the payment for that house. And it's still the King house and in the King family. So I'm not going to sell it. I'm not going to sell it. I go back there once in a while and bring a few things back to our house. Thank you. I've really enjoyed tonight. Thank you all for being here.
Hello, my name's Don Barba. My wife Linda and I live at 602 South 5th West, and we've been restoring the house for 33 years, and we're starting over again, so everybody knows it's a never-ending process, but it's, I really appreciate the award. We put a lot of time and effort into it. Thank you very much.
Our last award is for individual contribution to historic preservation, and this is the Dorothy Ogg Award. And many of you knew Dorothy. She passed away 3 years ago. This is the 3rd time we've made this award. Dorothy was just a darling person who served on the Historic Preservation Commission for many years as a representative of the Board of Adjustments, right? It was Board of Adjustments? MRA, all right. And always made sure to come to our meetings. I have to tell my favorite Dorothy story. Dorothy got to a point where she moved into assisted living facility out by Larchmont by the fort. And so I'd usually go pick her up before a meeting and bring her to a meeting, and Philip would usually drop her off on the way home. So one time I was going north on south, if you can do that, and I kind of miscalculated when I went to turn on reserve? Is that reserve? Reserve. And the person was a little irate when he had to slam on his brakes, and I was like, oh, geez, sorry about that. And Dorothy very sweetly, she must have been in her 80s then, said, well, would it help if I flipped him the bird? Oh, thank you, Dorothy, that's fine. I don't think that's necessary. So she really had a lot of character. So it's really fitting that we honor her every year with an award. This year's recipient is Scott Cooney. Scott? Congratulations. Here. Scott has worked very hard to preserve the buildings at Bonner, and he's also been very significant in securing the Lincoln School in the Rattlesnake to turn it into Lincoln School Cultural Center. So we really do praise Scott. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you very much. Actually, I actually tear down buildings for a living, so this is really a little different for me to preserve one. And if I had to do it over again, I'd probably have to question my sanity for what I'm trying to do, to tell you the truth. I all of a sudden have gotten involved with something a lot bigger than what I ever envisioned it could be. I'm very much a believer in historic preservation. Oh boy, there's the problem right there. That's the going back to a couple there, if you could, which is a real interesting building. My desire was actually to get the whole mill site out in Bonner, and that building now just inspired me even more so to pursue it. I'm not sure of the date it was built, but I'm guessing early 1900s. Is that right, Steve, or late 1800s? They used horses inside that, up on the second floor, to move moldings around when it was the ACM Timber Department. Just a spectacular building. And we had the opportunity to tour it the other day with Steve Adler, Peter Brown, and amongst other people, and it was a great opportunity to show them some really neat artifacts inside. Signatures on these beams stating Hitler was on his march in 1942, and he's 50 miles from Moscow. And all these different signatures in pencil grading, lumber grading pencils back in 1914, 1915. Great opportunity. Now I've got my work really cut out for me at this point, because I haven't given up on the whole mill site as a whole. Stimson has given me a tablespoon as a time. We do have the Milltown Log Yard that we're able to now rebuild a new community. That community had more services back in 1900 than they do now. They had doctors out there. They had a dry goods store. They had multiple means of transportation, horses. The trolley was running back then. They don't have that right now. And so what's happened is I've gotten involved in this community, and they don't want it to change. And I'm trying to pick a date of what they like. So was it 10 years ago, 20, or 100? Let's go 100, because you'll like it a lot more. You had more out there at that point. So it's a great opportunity. We have fish swimming up those rivers for the first time in over 100 years. But what's even better about it is this is what we have the opportunity to recreate and preserve indefinitely. We've taken inventory of every single tree out there on that site. We've employed an arborist to come in and assess the health of every tree. We're looking at every house individually, interior and exterior. I probably take things a little bit too far in that I actually want to see covenants that they have to have a porch swing, or they have to have rocking chair out there, because that actually is the truth, is they should be in the front yard. And as it was brought up earlier, that is really where it should be. They should be walking every day, saying hi to their neighbors. They should be having the barbecues. They should be bringing over that fresh baked apple pie when the new neighbor moves in. For the first time in 100 years, I was able to rent a house out to somebody who didn't work at that mill site. I put an ad in the paper, And I was concerned. I wasn't sure that anybody wanted to live out there. I could see it, and I think it's going to be a great place to live, but I wasn't sure if everybody else could. And I put an ad in the paper, and in 2 days we had over 60 phone calls. We canceled the ad. They still are coming in every single day. And so the opportunity exists to really recreate what was there, not just in housing, not in architectural terms, but in spirit. And that's the opportunity, I think, of a lifetime. We have a blank canvas. And to be privileged as much to do so is beyond me. I've always wanted to. I wish I had the determination, like Steve Adler, to go to school. I went to Bozeman and look at the architectural school, and I saw these guys sleeping under their desks. And I thought, ooh, that's a bit much. I'll go to demolition school. That's a one-day school. And so it's a great opportunity to be a part of history. We went back and we went through the workbooks, and the name, actually, the entity we bought it under is called Montana Improvement Company. That was formed back 110 years ago by Marcus Daly, Bonner, Hammond. And so we've had the opportunity for a rebirth of the Montana Improvement Company, LLC. So as we go forward, that is the new owner. The water system we were developing is owned by, or will be named, Montana Water Company, which was started in 1908. So a lot of history can come back. We have an opportunity to create something really great that they'll preserve it indefinitely. The biggest thing is we do want to get it into home ownership and see the pride of home ownership. That's really what it's all about. And see the grandeur of what it used to be and the pride of ownership. There's 16 homes on the west side. My company, and here's the real controversy, my company has been given the contract to demolish those 16 homes. I don't want to demolish them, so I start jacking them up. And I'm going to move them to the other side or move them over to Milltown. And if you're familiar with the area, Milltown and Bonner, I've lived in Missoula for 35 years, and I've always referred to it as Bonner Milltown. But you go out there, and whoa, it's not Bonner Milltown. It's West Riverside, Bonner, Milltown, Pilsfeld, and da-da-da-da. And so with all due respect to the Swedes, the Finns, and everybody else, you need to know that. You should have that knowledge. I still haven't figured out where that line is between Bonner and Milltown, but it's there somewhere, unbeknownst to me. It's a great opportunity. I'm very privileged and to have the honor to be involved in it. I still don't have the last puzzle, and that's that economic engine. And I work on it. I just got back from LA, meeting with the governor, insisting on assistance on this. We need his help as well, too. We need the funding for it. After that meeting at 6 o'clock, I meet with Grubb Ellis, the real estate company, who is going to take this and relist it, and who knows what's going to happen. But what I'm insisting on is historic preservation. I'd like to see those 3 houses I have jacked up go right back down and create the full district that we really need to see out there. So your prayers would be great. I haven't been a historic preservationist. My first project, I had the opportunity to work with Jim McDonald on the Sushi Hana building. And I just got in there. It was a great opportunity. It seemed like a good buy for $150,000. And got in there, I ripped out one ceiling, and wow, here's another ceiling, and then another one. Wow, well, and the third one's really nice. It's the tin ceiling by A.J. Gibson. And it was a great opportunity to go in and restore it. I wasn't successful in getting that on the register. My wife at the time had a hair salon, and they wanted privacy windows. They felt that was imperative. And as a long-time friend of mine, former friend of mine, Ron McDonald once said it, he thought it was very important there was privacy in that building as well, too. So hopefully we'll do better on this one. We have a lot of help with Philip and Cynthia Manning and Steve Adler and a host of other individuals, Dan Hall, who are really going to bat for us. This one will be done right, and it's something I think we'll all be able to be very proud of. The Lincoln School, I don't want to underscore that, but that's very important too, and that should have been done a long time ago. I've lived in the Rattlesnake for 35 years, and I'm remiss that we didn't do it quite some time ago. So, but I sure thank you for this award, and thank you for your support as well. Thank you.
Well, that concludes the presentation part of this. All that remains is whatever we have over here to eat and drink and talk amongst yourselves. Thank you all for coming.